Wayne came into the valley, I think, in the late 60s. Correct me if I'm wrong.
68.
68, there you go. And Wayne just about did everything everywhere in the valley. He was a logger, he was a mechanic. I think his training is as a heavy-duty mechanic. He likes to think of himself as a literary scholar. Now, one of the unexpected turns of events came when Wayne got into the newspaper business and quite successfully ran this little local rag called the Pemberton Valley News. Now, what most people don't realize is that the Peak and the Question have nothing on Wayne Ferguson and his dedicated little paper. And those of you who remember his editions, remember fondly that we looked forward to whatever it was that we were going to be fed. It was controversy or it was so many things. But it became a voice of the community and the valley. And this is why it's such an important part of our past. Wayne with his, had an interesting history. He developed his paper from a single one-sheeter. Like he says, he used to tack it on a telephone pole so that people could read it. And then eventually it morphed into something more sophisticated with photographs.
Morphing it.
And his little office, and he did all of this with the Apple computer things. He would take his pictures and download them, he'd put them in the paper, you get all of this fancy stuff, send it off, and we'd get a real newspaper. And this was a good thing for the community. And as I said before, we lost an important part of our sort of consciousness when the paper ceased to be published and it was taken over by Big Brother in Whistler. Anyway, Wayne's story is good, it's interesting, and I think you'll be enlightened at the end of the day. Go ahead, Wayne.
Okay, thank you, George, for that sterling introduction. The whole thing started, well, it really started back in 1972 when the Chamber of Commerce wanted to put out a newspaper, or some kind of a information, little brochure or something. So they picked up a fellow, and he said, "Oh, I can do that." He put up 3 issues and almost started a riot. The Chamber of Commerce said, "Would you like to put out the newspaper?" I said, "Hey, I'll do it, absolutely, guaranteed." When I was 19 years old, I wrote a book about Hitler. The least I can do right now is put out a newspaper in Pemberton. So, first thing I did was pee off Mr. Oberson by saying the trains are running 24 hours a day outside the hotel, and I put a little picture of a train on the front page. He really loved that. Next thing I did was pee off the farmers up the valley by saying we should have a sweet potato, raise sweet potatoes to create alcohol for cars and whatnot. Oh! I thought I was going to get lynched. My wife said, "You don't walk downtown, do you?" "Oh, absolutely." So it kept up like that for about a year and a half. I used to take the paper down to Squamish, and they print it up for $70, and the chamber would pay for it. But the best part was I put on the front page one day the Governor Douglas Highway from Harrison. Quit laughing. From Harrison to Pemberton, to the end of the lake. Governor Douglas Highway drew it up and put it in the paper. The amazing thing is that I took the paper down and I picked it up, and that night that I brought the paper back, I think it was the Minister of Highways who was in the hotel. It was a big meeting. So I took it in and spread it around. Strike 3! Oh, I just went anyway. No, it went on for about a year and a half, 2 years, and finally the chamber said, "Well, we've got to do something else." So I stopped doing the Pemberton Valley News for the Chamber of Commerce then. So anyway, I went to work and did different things. But in 1982, Cloudsley Hoodspith approached me and he said, "You want to write for the the Squamish Citizen. Hey, I'm like a volcano trying to explode here. Okay, I'll write. So I wrote for him till he closed up in '92 or something, and put out all these stories, and everybody hated him, and they said, "What's wrong with this guy? You know, should be put away." So when he closed up, and it was really a tragic thing because he got squashed between two trucks, and he was in. I went down to see him in GF Strong, I think it was, and he was all crippled up like this. So he looked like Stephen Hawkins. So anyway, I said, "I want to open the newspaper." "Oh yeah, go ahead, open the newspaper, but use good paper," he said. "Don't use any cheap stuff." So I said, "Okay. I'm going to bring it, first one down, I'm going to bring down to you so you can look at it and see if it's okay." So anyway, I put together a newspaper, and I started on this stuff here, this single sheet like this, and putting it up on the post. And after 5 or 6 issues, I realized it was costing me more to get it done at Garibaldi Graphics than it was worth. So, and I wanted to write these stories, and I couldn't have them copyrighted unless you write them and expose them to the public. If they're published, you're copyrighted. So I said, okay, I'll open the newspaper. So open the newspaper up above the gas station here, and it took off. People actually phoned to advertise it. I couldn't believe it. Are they crazy? Why would they want to put it in a little raggy paper like this? But somebody did. They kept phoning for advertising. So it sort of snowballed, and it got bigger and bigger. But I want to point out here on the top of these pages, it says, "Seeking a little excellence." And that's exactly what I felt like. I felt like Pemberton really deserved for people to understand what Pemberton's really like. It's a community locked into the mountains, and it's special. That's why it's seed potatoes. That's why they advertise down in, where's it, Dakota? Or where's the Idaho potatoes. They're Idaho potatoes, the best potatoes in the world. Where do they come from? So anyway, this town really has some great people, but the kids are the best. So when we got big enough, we would get the kids to deliver the newspapers, and they were the heart of the community. You know, basically they were the heart. And I kept this seeking a little excellence on the top of the paper all the way through because it's true. If you look for excellence, you'll find it. If you look for trash, you can find that too. But finding the excellence is harder. And the people that would write for the newspaper, they would come in, you know, kids would come in and say, "Can I write a column?" I said, "Sure, go ahead." Aeneas up in Mount Curry. He came in one day and he wanted to write. I said, "Okay." He said, "You know, you're going to die or worse and get hurt and all this stuff." He'd write this stuff, and I'd look at it and they'd say, "I'll put that in," because it's what he feels. That's actually how he thinks and how he looks at life. He came in one day and he said, I want to wish everybody a happy birthday." I said, "Okay, write it down." So he stood at the counter and he wrote down all the dates and names and everything for the people for birthdays. So I gave it to Pat, and she's going to type it up. And she looked at it. She said, "You see something weird about this?" I said, "What's wrong with it? It's misspelled?" "No, everything's in alphabetical order." How does somebody stand at a counter, write down names in alphabetical order? And then I realized this kid's a genius. So that's why after that, anytime he brought something in, I would put it in, because I knew that buried deep inside, this guy is a real genius. That's the kind of thing I was looking for when I put the newspaper out. And sometimes it doesn't look that way, but you know, you win, you lose. So the best issue we ever had sold, got rid of 2,000 copies, couldn't get any more copies, was the July 1st weekend when I had all the cheerleaders on the front page. Couldn't get enough of those papers. I don't know why that is. What has to be done is the community has to keep itself from getting too exposed to the outside. You gotta think, locally. Not only buy locally, you gotta think locally. And it's so easy to get lost in all the crap that comes in on TV and all the radio stations and everything. It's so easy to get lost in stuff that doesn't count. And people in Pemberton, I've realized over the years, that they want something that counts. And I don't sound stupid. It sounds trite, I guess, but this is what it really is excellence. Is when people look for something that's really true and they can hang on to. I wanted people to use the paper as a vehicle to get ideas out. Yes.
I noticed going through old editions of Pem Valley News that there were a lot of poets in Pemberton through the 70s and the 90s.
In the 70s?
Can you explain this to me? Why are there so many poems in the newspaper that are submitted by locals?
Well, who's the editor? Complain to the editor. No, the reason I put all this stuff in there is because old Jack up the valley, up in Divine, he used to, Jack Webb packed the cross at Easter down from Divine all the way to Pemberton, dragged the cross down. He wrote poems like nobody could write poems. He had the right cadence. Everything was perfect. Everything was perfect when he wrote it. So I went up to visit him one day in his little shack up there. I said, "Where do you get these ideas for your poems?" "They come from God," he said. I said, "That's as good a place as any. But as long as you keep writing the poems." So he wrote until he died, I guess, eventually. So anyway, it was a treat to get this stuff and put it in the paper. All these stories that people write they're not professional, but they want to be professional. They want to sound and look professional. That's fine. A couple of people wrote, and they wrote one column or two columns, and that's it. There was no more for that because they were just so far off. I thought maybe the second column would be better. It was worse. So they're gone. It wasn't because it wasn't excellence. It was crap. So I don't know what else to say about the Pemberton Valley News, except I wish right now, if I had been putting up the Pemberton Valley News, you wouldn't have the white elephant in the middle of town.
Were most of the articles were about things happening locally? Were mostly
I refuse to call Whistler Whistler. If I actually had a fight with my wife because we had advertising from Whistler Question, from the back of the Whistler Question. He transferred it from Whistler Question to the newspaper. I said, "Forget it. I don't want it. You're throwing away $300. I don't want it. Forget it. I'm not interested." I'd call it Valhalla North. I'd call it anything but Whistler. Would never mention the word Whistler because I didn't like Whistler. I still don't like Whistler.
So most of the things that people wrote about were about like Darcy, Pemberton.
No place else.
Yeah. Okay.
That was it. It was the Pemberton, Mount Currie, Divine, Darcy. It was the area, this area, where people live. But there's covering in this short a time what you have to do in order to put out a little crappy newspaper like this. 16 pages, all the cutting and pasting, and AG Foods used to come over. Vic would phone up in the middle of the day and say, "I need a full page ad on the back. Can you make one up?" "Sure." "What do you want to do?" So he sent me over all of the prices and everything. So I put together a thing on the computer and I printed out for him, had it run it over to Vic, and he would look at it and say, "That's all right, but I need this changed." Oh God, so back and forth. So, but time is marching on. I got to get the thing to bed and get it out of here. So anyway, all the ads for the AG Foods, that would pay for the paper. Now think about that. I look at the Little Wet News and I look at the Whistler Question and the Peak, if it's still there now. And if you look at all the ads, there's a fortune in those ads. If you look at the cost, what it costs these poor buggers to advertise in the newspaper, it's ridiculous. The best thing about a newspaper is that it's not like a radio. Mr. Potter, perfect example. the transmitter went out up on top of mountain, on top of Whistler Mountain. So he phones me up, he said, can you take up a roll of coax and a tuner. Take it up to the top of, up on top of Whistler Mountain and see what's wrong with it, because the minute the radio goes down, people will stop paying for the ad. If they'll say, well, you heard the ad on the radio. No, it wasn't on the radio. Even if somebody did hear it, it's gone. A newspaper is there forever. It passes through 3 or 4 hands. It's still here. The radio ad is gone. So, and the television ad, same thing. Television is there. It's great color, movement, everything. Boom, it's gone. So unless you remember it, it's not there anymore. A newspaper ad is there. It's physical. You can touch it.
I want to know what the most memorable newspaper was that you published, put out there. What was your favorite one to produce?
Other than the cheerleaders.
Oh.
Other than the cheerleader edition, I guess.
Yeah. The best one, I think the one that really got me closest to the heart was actually done in 1972, I think it was, or 74, when Dave Barrett got beat on the election. And on the front page of that little Pemberton Valley News in that day, I put Dave Barrett's picture talking to his advertising agency guy, the guy that was going to save his butt, right? And on the caption underneath, I said, Manny, what happened? Because the look on his face, like the last election. What happened? So, and I thought, when I put that in there, I said, that's perfect. It was right here. It's exactly what I was thinking. What happened, Manny? But I can't think of anything. If I thought long enough, I ever would be home in bed by then. 1972 or 73, 2 people wrote a letter to the editor complaining about a teacher in this little school over here. Remember that? No. Anyway, they complained about it, so I put the letters in the paper. And a very tall chairman of the school board phoned me up and said, you retract that, or we'll take you to court. We'll close the paper down. And I thought, ooh, I had a nerve there somewhere. 4 more people came up, and I talked to them individually in the apartment over here where we live. I did talk to them individually, and they told me the same story about this teacher. So I said, oh, I can't retract it, it's true. So the next time somebody wrote another letter, I put it in the newspaper again. A month later, the teacher was gone. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, he finally ended up in Seashell and got caught up there. But it was, talk about perversion. It's the kind of thing that if you don't keep on top of, it gets away on you. So anyway, then I realized, geez, you know, it's only a little paper. We actually got something done. And there's 2 or 3 items like that over the years that have happened that I realized that if somebody doesn't say something about these damn things, it doesn't happen. You know, these people get away with stuff forever unless you expose it and say this is not right. There's got to be changed. And I'm not going to go beating drums for all kinds of stuff, but there are certain things that have to be cleaned out, and that's the only way to do it. So, one of the good things about a newspaper is that if people read it and they feel what you're actually writing about, then they become champions too. So there's nothing wrong with that. We need more. We need more champions. Another thing that I forgot to mention this. We had a scanner. Of course, you have to have a scanner if you're in the newspaper business. So when the scanner went off and there was an accident, sometimes we would get to the accident before the police got there, and I would be taking pictures. And I got to the point now when the cops showed up that I would have pictures, and I got really good at it because they showed me what to take pictures of. I would take pictures of the accident scene, take skid marks and all the different things, and they would take the film and bring me back copies. You see, it got to the point where it was like, are you there yet? You know? Tell me what happened when you get there. But working with the police is another layer that the newspaper can do that the radio can't do, you know. It's just something else that you can do. It was fun. Oh, best one. Oh, you want a story? BC Bud. They phoned up the office, and of course Pat answered the phone because she loves the guy in the uniform. She answered the phone. She said, "Oh, okay, I'll be there." They phoned her up and said, "We've got a pot bust across the Birkenhead River, and we're going to go there, and we're going to cut down all the plants and bring them back. And you want to come?" "Oh, I've got to come." Guys in uniform. So anyway, they took her up there, and they stretched a rope across, and she went across on the rope to the other side. Damn near fell in 3 times coming back. She was so excited. Got back here. They brought back these big bundles of dope that they had in the back of the Suburban. They put them in the garage up here at the police station. So Pat, oh, I got to tell you the story. She's taking all notes and everything. So I wrote it all down. Next day, they found all the buds gone off out of the garage. Somebody went up there and cleaned the whole thing back out again. Now that's the story. Oh, that was perfect. But she was so happy to be doing this. It was exciting stuff. All this kind of stuff. It's all part of life, you know. It really gets you.
Circulation, did you do an issue every week or once?
Every 2 weeks.
Every 2 weeks?
Please, not every week.
How many hours did it take? How many man hours?
Well,
to put out?
I had to. It doesn't pay enough to keep me alive and 3 kids. Probably they agree with that. So I used to work for the great one out at the lake, Mr. Potvin, or I would work for this woman's husband over here, Brenda, and I would have to do 2 things. I'd have to put out the paper. I'd work till 7:30 or 8:30 at night, and then go to work the next day. And then as soon as I left this job, I'd go back to the office and put the paper together. So, but in the meantime, Patricia, my beloved, was collecting stories, and she was good at it. She was really good, and it takes a little bit of teamwork to try to figure out what the hell she just wrote down. Get the important stuff. Never mind the color of the guy's shoes. You don't care what he was wearing. You know, find out what exactly happened. Anyway, it turned out pretty good because she got better at it and I got better at it. But if anybody wants to open a newspaper, you go ahead. It's the thing to do.
You know, one of the things that you've touched on here that I think we're missing is people from the outside, you know, Nirvana, producing our news for us, and they don't really seem to reflect the feelings of the community. And
You hit upon exactly the thing. The newspaper in Squamish and Pemberton and Whistler and Lillooet and Vancouver are owned by big outfits. If you want to put a story in and it contravenes something that the union doesn't like, but if what you see in the newspaper and what you see on television, forget about it. It is absolutely controlled. The stories that really should be told can't be told because of certain obligations they have to unions and big business and whatnot. There's no way you can print this stuff or put it on television and on radio because they're controlled. And I'm not going to beat some drum for this for something, but it's just that these big corporations have taken over the news business, and what everybody gets, what we're all fed, is crap.
And it's all the same.
That's right.
Radio,
It has to be the same.
television, newspaper,
It's-
all the same.
It's run through this filter, and they take out all the stuff that doesn't agree with,
It's
and they
disgusting.
strip it on. That's what you have to say. If you want to run a newspaper, run your own newspaper. Don't listen to anybody else. Get your own news, and that's it.